So a serial killer is an individual who kills at least three individuals, and there is a cooling off period in between each murder. Normally, from the beginning to the end, you have at least 30 days. You're talking about, as I said, at least three victims, usually more than that. Depending upon how long a serial killer operates, you could be talking about double digits. Probably one of the most prolific serial killers I've ever seen was Andrei Chikatilo. Chikatilo, at the time of execution in Soviet Union, Chikatilo, more than 50 victims, and all of his victims were children, young people. Okay, there were a few young women that he killed, but more than 50 people. When you start looking at individuals like Green River, Gary Ridgway, now we're looking at more than like 19, 20 individuals. So serial killers operate for long periods of time. They oftentimes will fly under the radar because they are incredibly good at what we call impression management. So, like for instance, the BTK, who was recently apprehended, BTK was in so many ways the person that nobody would have thought would have been a serial killer. He was married. He was a member of the community. People knew him. He killed for a number of years, then went dormant, and then came back. And when he came back, people started putting two and two together, and they figured out that that person who was right next door to them and had been right next door to them for like 20 years was an individual who had killed a number of individuals. And that's what you get with a serial killer.
Well, men who commit serial sexual homicide, which is what the public usually is referring to when they talk about serial killers, as opposed to nurses and doctors that kill patients in hospitals, angels of death, etc. The serial killer, like Ted Bundy and John Wayne Gacy and David Parker Ray and those people, almost all of them, more than 90%, meet criteria, hard criteria for psychopathy. Almost all of them are sadists, meaning that they meet criteria for sadistic personality as it had been described in the official psychiatric manual, where there's enjoyment of the suffering of others as a key quality, and a love of control and domination of others, etc. Half of them are loners, men that can't make long relationships with others. So, in effect, some of them use serial killing as a way of having a one-night stand where they rape and woman, then kill her to destroy evidence, dump her body by the side of the road or whatever, like Ed Kemper out in California, and then go on to the next because they're incapable of a sustained romantic, intimate relationship. Some of them seeking revenge. Revenge is a motive in some of them. Like DeBartoleben in Texas, who had been brutalized by his father and his mother. So they're constantly getting back at the parents who abused them or neglected them. That would be true of Leonard Lake, that had this torture place he built in a remote area of California. And another motive, killing a specific parent over and over, but not actually killing the parent. For example, when I interviewed Tommy Lynn Sells in death row in Texas, he had been neglected, abused, neglected again by his mother, never knew his father, terrible, terrible childhood. And he went around killing about 70 people, most of them women. And when I asked him, I said, Tommy, it sounds to me like maybe these women were like symbols or duplicates of your mother. Did you ever have a thought about, killing your mom? And he told me, says, anyone touch a hair of her head, I'll kill him in a minute. You only got one mom. So that was a very important point that I see over and over in these men. They have the same kind of loyalty and love of a parent, even if the parent was abusive and horrible. That you can whip and hurt and yell and scream at a child, but if you're the mom or you're the dad, they're still going to love you. They may hate you as well, but they're going to love you. So he never touched the hair of his mother's head. Instead, he did symbolically get back at her through these other murders.
And with that, we are live. I am Chris C. That's my slasher bro over there, Darren. Welcome to Off the Blade, aka Off the Cuff here. We're talking about a very, I'd say, trigger warning type of a subject here. And we are talking about serial killers today. And we got some people already in the chat, so I'm going to say hi to them real quick. Nikki is here. What's going on, Nikki? Hope you're having a great day. And then Hersil, always appreciate you stopping by. He was watching along with me yesterday. Really appreciate that. So it's good to have you here. So we're going to talk about this in a minute. I'm just going to make some quick comments on the subject. So really just been a fan of true crime really since really the pandemic started. 2020, we're all shut down. We have nothing better to do. That's what got Netflix and these streaming services popular. You have these docuseries on here. The first one I watched was Conversations with a Killer, and that's on Ted Bundy. Now, I knew about Ted Bundy. My mom would talk about Ted Bundy. And that is probably one of the best docs that they did on that person in general, because you hear it from his own mouth. He talks in third person. I've never heard that before. At that time, I never heard that before. Like, talking to the reporters in the start of that doc, talking to him, it's like, if I help you all out, maybe you guys can help me. Thinking going tit for tat here. That was in the early 81, I believe. And,
right. Yeah.
He started talking third person on how this killer would do this. And really that started. And then you just go down that rabbit hole, like shows like Mindhunters, that just talk about these people. And serial killers to me are the original slashers. They just are. Leatherface is based off Ed Gein, a notorious serial killer. We can go farther back from there. I'm going to talk about this real quick. This is a graphic novel called From Hell. This is about Jack the Ripper, who many people consider to be the first serial killer. They never found out who it was. They think it was a man by the name of H.H. Holmes, who was a serial killer. He was a doctor, or he knew how to operate basically on people.
I think that's kind of been debunked.
Yeah,
I think they're kind of going for this Polish immigrant guy, and I think although it can't technically be proven, all the evidence kind of is with him. But that's like a really interesting case as well, because even the prince, we got like the royal family was rumored to be the killer at one point.
Yes, one of the members like that. You saw it in the papers. It's crazy. Of course, films have been done about it, like Ripper Street. I know that was a BBC show. That was very interesting. I've watched some of that as well. I'm just going to get this graphic novel was written by Alan Moore and Ed Campbell. Alan Moore is a legendary for doing these. I'm just going to do some quotes from this graphic novel. Just these men telling a story at the start of this, and the other one's walking his friend back to his house. So I'll just start with the last paragraphs here. Looks perhaps I should be heading home myself. No, I insist. You've walked me all that way. You'll come in for a nightcap? Surely. After all, Mr. Less, this is the very place. This is the house that Jack built. And basically, it's the outlier for that story. It's a very good graphic novel. It's a very dark story. There is a film called From Hell as well, where it's Edgar Allan Poe as the part. in this world, which I think is played by John Cusack, where it is Jack the Ripper that's doing this stuff. Just want to check too. There is, and you also get. This is released by Image Comics, called Nailbiter. This is a graphic novel series of a town that's basically a lot of people in the town are former or known serial killers came from this town. It's actually quite fun. If you're a slasher fan like me and Darren are, I would suggest checking out this series. It's actually quite fun. I like it a lot. The artwork is very good. It's really good kind of for what you see. I mean, you get interesting shots like this and what have you. So it's a fun one, definitely. So those were kind of stuff I'd recommend. And just really, a lot of slashers are based off of serial killers. Jason Voorhees, considering his character of how big he is and what have you, the man that you see on your bottom left with the glasses and the mustache, that's Mr. Ed Kemper. He is like 6'9", 6'7", close to 300 pounds. And he did his killing in California, in the Boardwalk area and around there at the same time as Richard Mullins was doing his stuff. So he had two serial killers at the time. California was a hub for these people. It just seemed to happen. It just during that time.
It's like New York was another back in the late 70s, like early 80s.
The Times Square killer. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So
there's killer, which I highly think is what Fulci looked at when he did New York Ripper, because it's the same type of scenario. Well, a man that's killing prostitutes. Yeah,
Maniac as well. Actually, when they were filming Maniac, they filmed it in this hotel. There's one scene in a hotel foyer, and literally the killer had struck outside that hotel literally like 2 weeks before they started filming. So there was up to half a dozen, I think, New York City serial killers going at one time, because you've got Cruising, the film Cruising with Al Pacino.
Yes.
The serial killer who they think was operating at that time was a guy called Paul Bateson, and he's actually in The Exorcist. So if you go back to The Exorcist, look at the hospital scene, and you'll see a guy working in he was actually a proper hospital orderly, and he was the guy literally that
he was the guy literally that was doing that. I did not know. That's crazy.
Wow. Yeah, Friedkin went and visited him in prison, and he basically, although he wouldn't admit it, the police took Friedkin aside when he was making the film and said, "Look, he's definitely the one who did it." And there was body parts turning up in the Hudson River of these gay men, and man, it's one hell of a story.
That's one thing we don't forget here. I mean, like I said, we call this a passion of ours, but I mean, it's like a drug. You get into it. We don't forget the victims here. This is a lot of men and women here.
Yeah,
and
it's
children.
Fascination.
And children.
Absolutely.
Basically, from the intro videos, there's what it's called shallow affect. Shallow affect means there's nothing there. There's just nothing. Really, it's crazy just to think about them. Like I say, to me, they're all these killers are originally OG slashers. Like, you look at films like this, like Maniac. You look at this. This is about a serial killer. It's a serial killer. It's a man going around scalping women, and putting them on these mannequin dolls that he has, and he has issues with his late mother. Originally, the actor who played Damien Karras in The Exorcist was going to be the detective hunting him down, and they decided not to do that. So this is a character piece, and you got films before this like Don't Answer the Phone. That's a serial killer.
Right.
You have Nightmare in a Damaged Brain. To me, that's a serial killer.
Yeah.
Don't Go in the House. That's a serial killer. These are all character pieces. A lot of giallos in the 70s. Those are serial killers. The one you talked about, The Killer Still Among Us, that's a notorious one who they don't know who did it. They had ideas. That's a great deep dive you all did, by the way. It's like
cheers, man.
Who done it? Films like this, The Deliberate Stranger, with
I love that film.
With Mark Harmon playing Ted Bundy. This is the best portrayal of Ted Bundy I have ever seen. He is perfect. He was meant for this part. It's scary. It's scary to think. He was
I don't
so
think
good
you'll
at
ever get anyone that portrays him. I know Zac Efron did a pretty good job
He
a few
did a
years
damn
back.
good job. Yeah.
For Mark Harmon, man. Because we're going to be covering that at some point, aren't we? Pretty soon.
Yeah, we are kind of the, the two films that we do. We'll be covering that. Of course, which some of this has been debunked if you've seen that docu-series on the Confession Killer. I'm talking, of course, about Henry Lee Lucas, specifically this film here, Henry. And this was done in the 80s, so we don't know what we know now. Mostly, I can tell you right now, they suspected his cousin. It was his cousin, right, Otis O'Toole, of killing John Walsh's son, Brandon. But they could never prove it. They mentioned that in an episode of Law and Order SVU. He died of prison of AIDS, so they could never prove that it was him. But there was a heavy thinking that it was him. You get this, and then you get this film that Unearthed just released called Confessions of a Serial Killer, which I highly recommend. Yeah. I highly recommend this. This is just like Henry. This is disturbing, and you want to talk about trigger warnings before there's such word as that. I mean, stuff happens here where it's just like insane. But yeah, this is what you get with these people, these men and women. Men aren't the only ones that do it. Women do it. They're just better at hiding what they do better than men are.
Yeah, but with him, though, it's kind of the exception to the rule, because most of these serial killers have got like a very high intelligence.
Yeah, he's as dumb as a doornail. Yeah, he was as dumb as a doornail.
Which is kind of like, when you read up on that case, it's kind of astounding to realize how far, that he went without being caught. Because, these all do develop with a very high intelligence. I mean, to go undetected for years on end, some of them, decades even, some of them, which we'll come into a few, it's astounding, really. Because didn't the term serial killer literally come out in the 70s?
Yeah, so it wasn't
a fairly new thing,
Really, it was Bundy is the outlier, because at that time they didn't know kind of what was going on. You just had, like in the giallos of the 70s, they called them like sex maniacs and stuff like that, because rape was always an issue. Rape was always present of these women. And these giallo directors knew what was going on. It happened in their countries. It happened all over the world. Of course, the way media is now and all this other stuff too, you can just see it and what happened.
He changed the game, Bundy, because they didn't even do profiles on any of these killers.
They did not.
Bundy completely changed how people were looking, and he was giving them information, as Chris said, off camera on the Green River Killer, and all that come into play. But only recently, like before that, you had Ed Gein in the 60s, I guess. But nowadays, we're looking into all the profiles and like there's cases going on at this moment in time. If you look on YouTube, there's that one guy who's been done for killing prostitutes. I'm trying to think of his name now. The guy I'm on about, the big heavy set guy. You're on mute, you are, Chris.
Yeah, sorry about that. It's because
that's okay.
Got an awesome new neighbor upstairs and stuff like that, so I don't want to make sure I get the vacuum in on there. He's just cleaning up there a little bit, vacuum. I'm just going to say what's up to the chat. Got a good lineup tonight. Thank you all for joining us here. This is great here. So I'm just gonna scroll up here and stuff like that, and here we go, Mr. Hall and Oates. We can officially start, which we have. Great to see you here, Holland. Thank you. Then Texas is here. What's going on, Tex? Great stuff he's doing over there at his channel. Definitely check him out. Yeah. Brad's here too. Thanks for joining, Brad. I really appreciate that. He's been doing the rounds in the world, it looks like. He had some good pictures he put up on Instagram, so very cool. Everyone's saying hi. Liv is here. What's going on, Liv? She joined me last night in the watch along a little bit, just chatting it up with us. Really appreciate that. Just saying hi and stuff like that. Let's go on. Hey, Sean, what's going on? Cinefil Sanity TV. Yeah, Confessions of a Serial Killer is a cool companion piece to Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. I actually think Confessions is a little more brutal in my opinion. Henry's the better made film, but dude, there's stuff that happens in Confessions that I'm just like, there's a scene where they go on the side of the road for shits and giggles basically, and they do, like I say, it's like really, it's really crazy. So
I've got the old DVD, but I've heard it's cut, so I've never really got around to watching it. But I need to check that out. I do like Henry. I'm not a massive fan of Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer as much as most people, but I am starting to warm a little bit to it now.
Yeah, and like I said, there's a lot of those films that they're great, they're dark and stuff like that, but they're based on they're just based off of what have you. You have films like The Town That Dreaded Sundown. That's the Phantom. You have Zodiac, which is based off the Zodiac killer, which I really like. I really like that film. Me and Darren will be discussing that one as well.
The whole case of the Zodiac killer is so fascinating, man. And there's possibilities. There's people, suspects that they think did it. Like that Arthur Lee guy is one that comes up a lot. But yeah,
they compared
I need
one
to go
of them
back and look at that
to handwriting, and it didn't match. So it's the one they used in the film where Gyllenhaal's character looks at him and says, "I know it was you," basically. That proved to be false. They checked that. It didn't match up, which is crazy.
Do you know, with like going off on a bit of a tangent, but do you know with the letters with the Zodiac was sending in those cryptic letters, has it been proved like every single message has been deciphered, or one there like one or two messages that were
a few of those were deciphered. There's a case that was mentioned on Unsolved Mysteries way back in the day. About Elliot Ness. There was a killer going around. You could never find out who did it. The man that captured Al Capone, that was the one case he could never solve. And I think that really affected him towards the end. It's just like they have no remorse. It's actually quite sad. You can't be sympathetic to them. Like I said, with the intro videos, obviously there's abuse. With a lot of these cases, there's heavy abuse. Richard Ramirez being a huge outlier, his cousin, a Vietnam vet, I believe, and coming back with that issue, showing him pictures, shooting his wife right in front of him and killing her right in front of him. And it's just that shallow affect. You just smile. Hearing video of him talking about it, it's like, it was a turn on for him. Really, that's what it is. It's like, really, it's just, it's a turn on to these people. And, a lot
of them got kind of childhood traumas, though, haven't they? I know quite a few of them start off by just killing animals, and then they work themselves up to killing a human being. And then when they get, like a taste for anything, really, they just
there's a lot of them when they're captured, like to do the mind games because it's their show, they believe. So they're very narcissistic, narcissistic. Narcissism is a big thing. They're entitled. They're just what have you. They're really up there. Why don't you get started there, Darren? Kind of with some of the evil bastards in your neck of the woods.
Right, yeah. So the big case in the UK was a guy called Peter Sutcliffe. So he was the Yorkshire Ripper. And the best way to describe him would be like the UK's equivalent to Ted Bundy. So what he would do, so he used to work in a truck. He used to drive a truck, basically, and he'd be going through all the north of England. But what he would do is he would prey on prostitutes late at night. He used these prostitutes himself as well. And then, he worked his way up. Then kind of at first it was rumored that he did some killing in maybe the 60s, but it's never been confirmed. But he did make a few mistakes because he killed a young girl he thought was a prostitute. She was like 17 or 18, I think, at the time. And it's rumored that he did go abroad. So there's a few killings that turned up in France, and they can actually put him in France at that time.
Put him at that time.
Yeah, wow. So which is mind-boggling, really. The only thing is now he's been a couple of years since he passed away, but he didn't have a great time in prison because one inmate basically held him down and stuck like an implement in his eye. So he was blind for a lot of his, later life after the killings. And I think he had diabetes, so that, he didn't have a great life, which is good, obviously.
Yeah.
So he would be the big one. There's quite a few. There's have you heard of Fred and Rosemary West?
Yes.
They were like a couple that lived basically in the Bristol kind of Cheltenham area, like southwest area of England. What they would do is they would kill these young girls. Basically Rose would have all these kind of sex parties. She would bring these big black men in like every so often to have sex with her.
Man.
But what they would do, they would befriend these young girls, would come in and look after the kids or what have you. And he ended up basically killing them and like burying them because he was a builder, you see. So he would bury them in the concrete of his house.
These properties.
Yeah. So when they found out what he was doing, they kind of sort of demolitioned the house and they found bodies and bodies being just buried. And he famously kind of committed suicide in prison. She's still alive. She's a very fucking arrogant, horrible woman.
Yeah, they get
She's a big butch type, but yeah, there's I'm trying to think. There's obviously Jack the Ripper, which you said. The thing I remember with Jack the Ripper is he was basically moments away from being caught in the one murder, because literally the girl, the one guy coming up and he saw this girl on the floor and he actually seen the Ripper with this girl. So he literally got away. He was literally seconds away from being caught at one point. That's a case I would love, if we could find a definitive answer.
Answer for that.
They've tried with DNA and all that,
Yeah, he makes a good point there. Yeah, the killer is very underrated. I totally
The Monster Florence case is honestly, if you've not seen the video me and Dirk did, have a look into that, man, because it just goes off on these different kind of, you think it's this one guy, then you think it's like the set of three guys, and it's all linked to like black magic. There's all
satanic panic type stuff,
right? So Dirk basically read the audio book, and I was watching like the documentary. But I've just recently bought that book now, so I'm going to dive into that because there's two different aspects to the case.
Nice.
Like Dirk come up with like what he thinks, and I come up with what I think. So yeah, check out that video, guys, if you get a chance.
Yeah, that's very good. Talk about Mr. Nielsen, if you could, please.
Oh,
I've seen docs on him before, but his case is quite disturbing.
So you got Dennis Nielsen, right, back in the 70s. He was basically he worked for the UK government in some kind of job center.
Yeah.
What he would do is he would go to this, like basically this pub, a lot of gay men frequent.
Yeah, he was a gay man. Yes.
Yeah, and what he would do is he would pick up these young boys, and when I say young boy, they're probably early 20s, young boys to him. He would get them drunk, and then he would just violently kill them.
How about that? Kind of sounds familiar, doesn't it? To a guy who would do that a few years later. Yeah.
But what he would do as well is, in killing them, he would literally put them in a chair. So he'd go off to work, and then when he come back from work, he would have conversations with them as if they were still alive.
Still alive, yep.
The guy, man, was so creepy. But what was his downfall was he put all the body parts, he flushed them down the toilet.
Yeah, they're on the pipes.
So the whole sewer system was just full of body parts.
Dead body parts, yeah.
Body fat.
You could smell it. They talked to the tenants. You could smell it.
Yeah.
He did videos. There's a lot of videos from his apartment or from his house. It's crazy. Dirty.
His one boyfriend is still alive, and he actually does a lot of documentaries talking about him. But what they did was the police found out, obviously, through the drains that it was him. They come back, arrested him, and he was just cool as you like.
Yeah.
He just said, yeah, I did it. He said, if you look over there in the wardrobe, there's 3 bags, black bags full of body parts. He said downstairs, if you go into like the living room, you'll see someone's head in one of the things he kept them in. Yeah, and he was just this Scottish guy, very again, I would say very intelligent guy. He started off in the Navy as well, because it was rumored again that he might have killed someone in the Navy or went on a boat. Someone went overboard and wasn't accounted for by all accounts.
Sheesh. Yeah.
So that's a big case in the UK.
It was
There's some great docs on it.
Yes, there is. I saw one on YouTube, and they did one, the Nielsen tapes. They did that one on Netflix and stuff. Where
that's right, yeah.
That one's really good.
There's an Arrow release of a film called Cold Light of Day as well, which is all based on that case.
I've seen that one.
It's very like raw, quite gritty, but it's worth a watch. I'd say, definitely worth a watch.
I'll get into one in a second. A lot of this stuff certain information comes from this book that I got at my grocery store. They don't put this out anymore.
Right.
For obvious reasons. Yeah, I'm a sick man here. But the Golden State Killer is a big one.
Man, this is a big one for me as well.
This is the big one. Former policeman Joseph D'Angelo in 1973 took a plea deal to avoid the death penalty and got multiple life sentences without parole. Can't see it here. There's the known victims that he killed as a police officer. Remember that.
He started off as the vice seller. Basically, what he would do is he would go in and he started off being a peeping Tom, and then he kind of worked up to literally just robbing people. Vicelia Ransacker, I think his name was at one point. There's a really good podcast that covers all that case, and it interviews all people connected to the case and victims and all that.
Yes,
that guy was caught completely randomly as well by DNA profiling. That's a case I've covered quite a bit. I always been reading up on that, and he's still alive today. And he's because if you look at all the court footage of him, right, he's in a wheelchair and he tries to depict himself as some really old guy who can't barely move and all that.
Yes.
But then they privately recorded him in his jail cell. And he was doing fucking push-ups.
He's quite alert. He's quite fit. He's quite damn fit.
It was crazy, man.
These pictures you kind of see on the side here, that is Patton Oswalt. The one next to him, that was his wife, Miss McNamara. This not only hurts the victims, this hurts the people that were involved in capturing him. She was unfortunately died of a overdose when D'Angelo was convicted.
I think she never got to see the
went on
conviction.
Twitter. Yeah, he went on Twitter and he said, this is for my wife. So sorry.
She basically was one of the only people pursuing the case at one point. She used to put out podcasts and all that. Yeah. But the sad thing about the whole case was she never got to see who the killer was, because
she never got that opportunity. She wrote a book on it.
Yeah. She was neglecting herself as well. She was staying up all hours of the night, researching the case.
It can consume you. The detective, talking to him about it. Yeah, he lost his marriage. His wife said, "It's like this case is your other wife. You have to become obsessed with these." So they take more than they do more than just kill the victims. They affect everybody. It's crazy. Do
you know the one thing about him though? So when he was first going out with a girlfriend, kind of like a childhood sweetheart.
Yeah.
And her name was Bonnie. So she kind of literally got away from him at one point, realized he was a bit of a psychopath. But what he would do when he was killing his victims is he would call them Bonnie. And what he would do as well is he would put plates on the victims, so say that if they had kids, he would take them into another room and put plates on the bodies of their husbands. Yeah. So if they moved, he could hear the plates moving.
Yes. It's insane. Yeah.
And another thing that's insane is he would literally be eating out of their fridge, and he would stay there for hours after raping and, ultimately killing a lot of them. he was completely one on his own. He was a police officer, like Chris said, but what he would do, he got caught close a couple of times, but he was so agile where he would run over fences and, and he seemed to just have this sixth sense that he could just get away. He just got away in the nick of time every time. But yeah, that's one hell of a case, man. One hell of a case. I'm just glad it came to a conclusion.
May you rot in hell when it happens. Also, like I said, with Ted Bundy, what else can you say about that? I know Amazon did a doc on his girlfriend Liz. I do believe he did love her. I do believe that they talked to each other after this happened. It's almost haunting because she used to call him. Because she's like, "Is this my fault?" And he basically said, "Liz, I was doing this before I met you. I mean, I was doing this before." I think he wanted a family. I don't think he could do it. I don't think he could. I think he struggled with that. I'm not playing the devil's advocate here. I don't know what the hell would be going through his mind. When
didn't he have, like, with Bundy, with her, he had some kind of fixation on women with long brown hair or black hair?
Yes, she bundled up her hair. With the Deliberate Stranger, they used the excuse like it was parted. Just down but parted. There was cases when the detective Klepper talked to him. He mentioned about her name was JoJo. When she was abducted, he put her in the back seat. He said, and I quote for the most part, she's like, "I have to get back, to get my finals done with and stuff like that." He's like, "I was just saying, it'll happen." And he said, "In my mind, that's not happening at all. She's not going away." Took her to where he was living at, and he brutalized her. There's a victim who did survive. Where he assaulted her with a bedpost. And she survived that. She played dead. And
that was a common thing as well, because when he did because he did like these girls in a dormitory towards the end. I think he knew his time was running out. By this time, he'd been caught.
Yeah, because he's going a little bit crazy. Where a 13-year-old girl died because of that.
Right,
he snatched her out from a van. Yeah, killed her. That got him the death penalty for the second time.
There's so much to talk about with Bundy, though, because what he would do is he would openly like turn up on say these beaches, and he'd pretend to have his arm in a sling. But in the one case, he literally told the women his name was Ted, and he drove a Volkswagen. He drove a Volkswagen.
Witnesses, they had a sketch and stuff like that. This was before these agencies had contact. You kept them per district and per state, so he would just move back and forth. And it's crazy to think you can escape from a facility not once but twice.
But he thought he was untouchable, though, because wasn't he high up in the government? He was actually working, and he was so intelligent.
Worked on the campaign, and
that's right, for an election.
He got caught for like spying, where he got the girlfriend that he had at the time was too much for him. Was above him. That's I think what broke him. Once that relationship ended, that triggered it. Because this was in the 70s. This was during the time, you have women powered, stuff like that, women going up in the workplace, actually getting their just due. You have him being the outlier, being the narcissistic person that he was. A very interesting childhood, not knowing who his parents were, then finding out who his parents were. Basically, what was it? Brutal, his grandparents were, his grandfather, I think, was his father, something like that. It's interesting.
I think his mother he thought was his sister or something.
Yes.
Something along those lines.
It's really talking to childhood acquaintances of his, specifically one woman.
So that was
he was mean as a child, So
So basically, there was a young girl that went missing as well. So when Ted was about 14 or 15, there was a young girl that he used to be very good friends with, about 6 or 7. Something along, I'm paraphrasing, something along those lines. And she completely went missing at that time, and no one knew what happened to her. But they kind of like went back in time, and Ted would have had to have been the killer. There was no kind of denying that.
Yeah,
So they
and he
think that was
said,
his first victim. Yeah, but he
my
did.
mom
He
would
wouldn't
talk
stop
about
it.
him.
You know.
It's like my mom worked for Alameda County in the 70s here in California. Of course, you heard about it on the news. When they finally captured him, of course, he tried to get out of it at the last minute. That did not happen. He tried to blame the porn industry for that. Like, what are they, sending these, what are they doing with these,
Yeah.
putting this pornography on TV and all this other stuff too. And it's like, give me a break. It was too little too late. And he got
I think
his
he
ass
even mentioned.
electrocuted.
I think he even mentioned slasher films at one point as well. As an interview where he says about that.
He did.
But he was so intelligent, though. That's the thing. He escaped twice. He kind of represented himself in court.
Yeah.
You would have groupies turning up in court for him because he was so kind of good looking and charismatic.
Very charismatic. He knew the law. He was training to be a lawyer.
Yeah.
So he went into police stations. He openly admitted that. He knew what the police were doing. He knew how the system worked. That's how smart he was. He was not stupid.
Yeah.
He
like
was not
D'Angelo,
stupid.
he was kind of one step ahead at one point. But then when they got him, when he escaped the second time and he knew he was doomed, like all the evidence was against him and all that, he went on that one spree, didn't he, where he killed all those girls in the dormitory?
Yeah, dormitory with a piece of wood.
With
He
a
picked
piece
it
of
up
wood,
and
yeah.
he did just like you see kind of mostly in the films. He assaulted them. There was a lot of hate in those. Talking to the sheriff of that county, he said there was a lot of hate here. It was brutalized. You knew it was personal.
Yeah.
It was very personal. It's unfortunate.
The one girl seen him though. One girl got away, or she kind of seen him, and there is a kind of a sketch, I think it is, that looks exactly like him with like this balaclava thing on. But yeah, he was a classic case of just completely psychotic. 1 minute like a Jekyll and Hyde almost. 1 minute such a nice guy, would help anyone. And then you would apparently just black would come over his eyes, and he would just turn into this fucking monster, basically.
Of course, it's like,
yeah.
and there was, like I said, this is for the victims and stuff like that. There's closure for that, and then they're still looking for more of these victims because they think, he confessed to 33, I think. There's probably around 50. When you think about that, which is insane to think.
I think there's probably more, to be honest, Chris, because I've heard some people even suggest that it was in the hundreds, because a lot of these young girls would just go missing,
Yeah, just think about that. That's almost an average one person a day. Average monthly. It's like a hobby where you can just go out, you find those opportunities. One quick mention: Ronnie Shure. Who lived in Texas, a flipping pedophile piece of shit. He the tourniquet killer. I forgot the business. He was executed in 2018. He tourniquet killer. You get these young ladies in his van, and he just had a tourniquet with it, and he just strangled them and killed them. He went into a house. He raped the young girl, and this went out because he wanted to see if he could do that. Says, let's see if I can get into this house. He says, jarred the door. She was home by herself, went in there and just did the business. And the way he says it, they just say it so casual, like it's not like just another day, right? Just another day.
Yeah.
Just doing this stuff. And it's crazy. It's insane.
You only got to look at
in the chat.
Look at the video coverage of BTK Killer. Hey, Jamie.
Hey, Jamie. That's crazy.
Yeah.
There's some friends of my parents. Their daughter disappeared too. They never found her either. People disappear. It's crazy. You don't know what happened to them. It's like people disappear like all the time. Like I say, this is a touchy subject. They did mention that.
Yeah.
They did mention that in the opening video. The Red Ripper. This guy, Russian, the product of Soviet poverty and childhood shame. Andrei Chikatilo preyed on Russian children. This may be it's definitely like in the 50s. He is notorious This guy's notorious, an evil bastard, preyed on children, right? These people don't, it's just like collection of knives, one of his victims. Yeah. So these are all the knives that he had. So literally, these are trophies, right? A different knife for a different victim all the time. It's really crazy. People like that.
So was he was in the 1950s, was he?
Yeah,
or did he have like?
That's right.
Okay.
Really, it's the song from Slayer, "Angel of Death." That's a Nazi doctor.
Auschwitz, yes. The meaning of pain. Yeah.
Yeah. I forget his name. He's been mentioned once or twice. But literally, they called him the Angel of Death. That may be in the
Joseph
hundreds.
Mengele, I think.
Yes. In the hundreds to 200s, maybe more.
If you actually think about those Nazis with the killing of the Jews, like you could say up to 1 million, Yeah. So in the hundreds of thousands, some of these like German officers, and that's a whole different kettle of fish, man.
Yeah, it's crazy type stuff. One I just kind of watched. Just mention this guy real quick, then I'll hand it over to you, Darren. Some other stuff here. Chester Turner, 14 women.
That's a big case.
In Los Angeles. This was during a very bad time in the early 90s. Of course, the whole Rodney King incident. They said at the end of the year during this time, 1,000 murders. So that's a murder a day average, talking to one of the detectives. He had a good life. This is one of the outliers here. He had a good life, had good parents, but he was a sexual deviant when he was younger, and very big man. Has a scar on. Again, he's on death row here in this state. The problem with this state is they haven't had an execution since I think 96. So it's it's like. So he'll either die in prison or die by the needle, one or the two. But his case, like you say, is very interesting. Very big man. He's like about 6 foot something, close to 300 pounds. Has a scar like on his face. You kind of can't see here. That was from a drug deal gone bad when he was younger. So he was always into that. But this kind of proves that you can have a good life and all this other stuff, and you can just go bad. Some people are born with it. I do believe that. Other ones, maybe not so much.
Some of them are a product of society, the way they're brought up. I think you've got to have an element of evil in you anyway to kill somebody. But the way I look at things, I think anyone, and I don't mean being a serial killer, but I think if anyone was pushed to a certain limit, that they have got the ability to kill. And I think that's you, me, if your family or anyone's getting kind of, in trouble, so to speak, that anyone could kill. But these guys, they just go on and do it to a different level.
Yeah, it's very different.
Have you heard of the Weepy Voice Killer?
It sounds
Have you heard familiar. Of that case?
I've heard a little bit about it, but not a lot.
So you've got Paul Michael Stefani was his name. And what he would do, right, is he would pick up these women, so the one he picked up in this cafe, and she was kind of just new going to this town. He befriended her, took her to the back of some building he used to work in, and killed her with an ice pick. But what he would do is he would run straight to the police, straight to the phone box, and warn the police and say, "Look, all the recordings are on YouTube and they are fucking chilling." But in this high-pitched voice, because he's trying to disguise his voice, he was saying, "Yeah, I killed this girl right in the back of such and such with an ice pick. She's there now." It was a cry out for help. Literally he would do the killing, and then he would be so remorseful. He would just these cry out for help by phoning up the police. And they did end up catching up with him. And he did die fairly young in his 50s of cancer in prison. But that's like a good case. I say good case, you know what I mean? These are
like you said, it's an interesting case. That's fine. Do you know about England's Dr. Death? So it was Harold Chipman.
Yes, absolutely.
The official cracks to slay more than 200 patients.
Right. So this guy, what he would do as well, it was mainly old women.
Yeah.
And he would give them these lethal injections, say like basically turning up, pretending to like help them with whatever like health issues they had. And he went undetected for one hell of a long time, actually. He literally did kill hundreds of people, which is insane. Absolutely insane.
Yeah, a loner with no friends growing up, Chipman was both traumatized and fascinated by his mother's long, slow death from lung cancer. My
Right.
father died of lung cancer. Again, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. It's bad. It's bad to see in front of you. I've seen both. I've seen my grandfather die of prostate cancer. I've seen my father die of lung cancer. It eats away. It's not pretty.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah,
That
his thriving
probably triggered
practice.
him.
Yeah, his thriving practice as a family practitioner abruptly ended when he was fired in 1975 for forging prescriptions to feed his addiction to the painkiller pethidine.
That's right. Yeah.
Yet he continued to find work as a physician in a medical system that would later come under fire for protecting him. Yeah, sentenced to life without possibility of parole, Shipman hanged himself in his cell in 2004, the night before his 58th birthday. That's
That
what we call
reminds me.
divine justice.
Yeah, that reminds me of another UK case. There was a lady called Beverly Allett, and what it was, she was a nurse, and she would deal with young babies. But
Wow.
she was literally killing these young babies, like Shipman in a way, And again, it went undetected for a little bit until all the kind of pieces of the puzzle come together. There's recently been another case in the UK as well of another young lady, a young woman who's done the same. But yeah, just killing babies for the sake of it, man. It's just
It's
dregs the
crazy.
society,
You have the murders on the moors. Myra Hindley.
Myra Hindley and
Yeah, the
Ian.
press dubbed her the most evil woman in Britain. For once, the frequently hyperbolic UK newspapers were not exaggerating. Sheesh. So
That case was crazy, man. So basically, her and her boyfriend at the time was a guy called Ian. I'm trying to think of his second name. Ian Brady. So basically, they would pick up these young kids. They go out in the car and they knew some of the youngsters as well. But what they would do is they would pick up these young kids, take them to the Yorkshire moors, kill them, and bury them there. But Brady was getting a little bit because he started off, he was the one who instigated it, and he kind of got Myra into his way of thinking.
It's like an evil Bonnie and Clyde type of a situation.
Yeah, kind of like testing her. And what happened one day as well? Yeah. So they brought this guy back. Myra Hindley was sister was going out with this one guy. So they kind of befriended him and took him back. They went back to Ian Brady's flat the one night or house. And he literally killed this guy with an axe in front of Hindley and this, the sister's boyfriend. But he went straight to the police, and that's how they were caught. But Brady was another fucking nasty piece of work, man.
Yeah, she died in prison at age 60 in 2002. Ian died 15 years later in a prison psychiatric hospital. So, yeah, he's definitely cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. There.
He was in Broadmoor, which is the worst place you can go. It basically
holds all the...
It's an insane asylum. Yeah. And what happened with him was for years since he was caught, that he went on hunger strikes so many times they had to force feed him with tubes. But he was heavily into the Nazis when he was younger. He would read all the books on the Nazis, and I do believe Myra Hindley wasn't a serial killer, wasn't in her blood or anything, but he did manipulate her.
He manipulated her. Yeah. You want to be loved. It's what you want. You want to be loved by your significant other. Yeah. And
right.
That's the way it is. It's almost like it's a parent-child relationship. If you can come,
what's so sad about that?
Off a lady as a father figure, and if they've never had a father figure, they will gravitate to that in a second because that's what they want,
Yeah. What's so sad about that case as well, like Jamie was mentioning earlier, there was a young boy called Keith Bennett. He went missing. They pretty much, they know they killed him, but Brady or Hindley would never let his mother and his brother know where the body was buried, because the Moors is a massive place, man. They've tried.
Yeah, because you
to
live
find
next
it.
to it, right? Or you
Yeah,
live,
yeah.
yeah.
It's the middle of nowhere, basically. It's like what you see in American Werewolf in London is pretty much like
It's a
that for
perfect
miles.
burial ground, really, to tell
It
you the
is.
truth, because they
But
can
what
put
they used to
people there.
do, right? They would bury a child, and they would take photographs of where they are on the moors as some kind of morbid little fucking in joke that they had between themselves. But yeah, they basically wouldn't let that mother know, and she died without knowing where her son was buried, which is quite sad, you know. I think his brother's still alive.
It's crazy to the point. Yeah, it's this one right here. I want to mention Death House landlady Dorothea Puente fooled everyone for years as sick and elderly lodgers at her boarding house disappeared. So I remember watching a doc on her. Yeah, so
Okay, I'm new to that
she'll
one.
take like transients, sometimes people down on their luck, and give them these places, and either they disappeared or they died mysteriously, and they finally busted her ass for doing that. Like I say, doesn't matter how old you get. If you don't get caught, the older you get, you still have that mindset. With just like crazy cases. Yeah, Hearst makes a good point. Yeah, Slayer, Angel of Death, badass song, but so much controversy. It's in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, word for word. They have the script for that. Check that out. It's quite interesting. The lead singer is Catholic, by the way. So for all you devil worshiping SOBs and stuff like that, shut up.
Tom Araya. Yeah. Jeff Hanneman died, didn't he, a few years back as well, the guitarist.
The bassist, the guitarist. Yes, he did. I had a chance to see him at the Cow Palace before that happened.
I've seen Slayer quite a few times, back in the 80s. Yeah.
Like I say, this is an interesting magazine if you can get it. Of course, the Damsel of Death, mental demons drove sex worker Aileen Wuornos to slay her clients. We all know a lot about that. Can't see it. The one on the bottom there, that's Charlize Theron playing her. She picked these men up innocent. They were innocent, not to her. She'd write to her. She was gay. She'd write to her lover, basically, her roommate, saying what was going on. I remember when she was caught. They showed that whole scene. You can hear and stuff like that when the dude was playing pool with her, like busted her. He was undercover.
Yeah.
Finally, she asked for the death penalty. You can see the rage and disgust in her. It just seeped out of her. It's like, put me to death. I don't care. Kill me. Just do it. I'm done.
That film is amazing as well. I think Charlize Theron, she actually put on weight and everything to do that role. And it's like, if you look at her, it's like looking at a different woman now. But yeah, Aileen Wuornos, man, that was
Of course, really they've done films on it before. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood comes to mind. Of course, Sharon Tate, but of course we're talking about Charles Manson.
I was going to say, how do you stand with Charles Manson? Because literally, you could actually say that he never killed anyone. Although I think it's rumored that he maybe have killed at least one.
He was a former pimp and what have you, but he did do the power of suggestion. One of those ladies has been released. I forget her name at the moment. She's no real harm to anybody.
Patricia Krenkwinkel, I think.
Yes. But talking to him, all this other stuff too, you see when the drugs and shit wears off, you got that person. May long rot in fucking purgatory where he belongs. I don't think the devil wants him. Yeah. He used the song that the Beatles did as an excuse with Helter Skelter.
Yeah, the White Album.
Yeah.
But what he would do with basically the family, he would get them in and he would basically get them all to take ecstasy.
Can't see her, but that's Sharon Tate there, second from who was famously with Roman Polanski, who I think that murder broke him psychologically. He loved her. I think that really broke him badly for what we know now. It's insane. The inheritors to the Folgers empire, gone. Sharon Tate, brutally stabbed, pregnant. Her white dress was pink when they found it because the blood seeped in. I think one of the places they wrote pagan blood on the walls. It's like it's insane.
Yeah, there was a guy called Tex Watson. Probably everyone knows this, but
Yes.
Susan Atkins was the one who actually knifed her while her baby was in her stomach, and she kind of begged, like she said, whatever you do, just let me have this baby so that the baby will be okay. And she just brutally just not. She even admitted it, and they were all going to get away with this as well until she went and becomes like really stupid in prison and started bragging about it to a
Yeah, she
cellmate.
bragged about it. Yeah.
And that's how they got caught. Because Manson, again, I feel, was of a very high intelligence.
Oh,
He
no,
would get
he
them
is
all
cult
to
of
take.
personality, right?
Yeah,
He's a
yeah,
cult leader. It's
he
like he
literally
couldn't
would get
hack
them
it.
all to
Yeah, he
take
couldn't
drugs.
hack it as a pimp. He couldn't hack it
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that because he's known to being very vicious to his clients that he had. He was known for that. You could see that in interviews from prison. He was
I think he cut the one guy's ear off as well, didn't he?
Yeah, mean asshole and stuff like that. Doesn't give two shits about the people and all this other stuff too.
He was a genius though in a way, and I know people might say, "Oh, shut up, Darren," but what he would do is he would drug these people up and he would fake the crucifixion scenes, and they all thought he was Jesus. Now you're looking back on that, now you think that's so silly, but the guy was an amazing musician. He actually wrote a song which the Beach Boys actually produced, and they kind of did their own version of it, and there was a lot of like bad kind of vibes between them because he felt that they were nicking his song. He does a song on YouTube, you can hear it, called Game Girl, which I think is as good as, like, I don't want to like champion a serial killer. I know he's dead now, but the song is an amazing piece of work.
Yes.
But yeah, the Beach Boys drummer become like in with the Manson family, the girls, he was having sex with a lot of the girls, and he kind of got dragged into their way of life. Because Charles Manson was staying at the Beach Boys drummer's place, and they wouldn't leave apparently, and there was
they just wouldn't do it. You have just kind of cases like that. Of course, it's like you never kind of know. They're all dead and gone, but obviously drugs and the time has a lot to do with it. During the end of the 60s. It's like it's crazy times, and
it was a mistake as well because he thought that one of the members of, I think the manager of the Beach Boys was living in the same house on Cielo Drive.
Yes.
And it was kind of by accident that Sharon Tate got killed. I think she was with a hairdresser friend and a couple of others.
It's insane. Like you say, you have angels of death. You have Elizabeth Wettlaufer, who was a nurse, Canadian.
Okay, that happened a lot.
She took out quite a few patients. A lot of them very elderly. So she was a nurse at these hospitals. And she confessed, that's her right there, the big lady. She confessed to one of the doctors saying that she did it. And there's video of her talking to the police about that, where she's like, I just think it's time. She used the excuse that God was telling her to kind of do this stuff. She was on drugs on and off through the hospital, taking them and stuff like that. And she'd basically give these elderly patients lethal doses. So she's basically, like you say, playing the angel of death, thinking it's a mercy killing. You're putting them out of their misery, in my opinion. She, of course, got life in prison. Bobby Sue Dudley, she's a very interesting case. You can consider her a serial killer, but Bobby Sue Dudley managed to pursue a successfully nursing career that had her working as a night supervisor at St. Petersburg, Florida nursing home. Then patients started dying on her watch. The first was a 97-year-old woman, so the death raised no red flags, but then 5 more women died over the next 2 weeks, followed by 5 patients in a single day. So,
I mean, do you think it's a power thing with them? Because they got the power of life and death?
Yes,
maybe,
I do think so. Stuff was going on, like with Wettlaufer. She got a divorce. Her husband divorced her. You kind of see the way she looks and stuff like that. I think she kind of gave up on herself, thinking she was ugly. So she's thinking she got these relationships in what she said in her patients, and these elderly gentlemen acting like perverts in her opinion, and she decided to end their life because of that. Like shots of insulin. Shots of insulin can do that. like
Oh,
certain
God,
shots. Like
absolutely. Yeah.
if you can get to that, a Yumi Kabuki, I know a little. Kabuki, I know a little bit about her.
I've got
Like
a
I say,
book on, like a magazine on him.
yeah,
It's
she
been a
was a nurse.
while
Like
since
I
I
say, a
read
lot
it.
of these are nurses and whatever like that. And it's like crazy. You have the family annihilators. Of course, you have Chris Watts. I followed that case for a long time.
Yeah, and me. Yeah.
It's insane. A good-looking man with a good-looking family, two daughters, another child on the way. I think he, in his narcissistic mind, didn't want another child. He didn't want the
He
life that he
didn't
had. He didn't
exactly. He didn't
want
want
it.
his wife.
Shanann
And
had lupus.
yeah,
And it seemed perfect. Just one night it happened because he was having an affair, and that's all it took.
I
And he
mean, if you
killed
look
her
at
and
his
he killed both of them.
yeah, if you
Technically,
look at
four
his
people.
girlfriend,
Yeah,
they say that like she's basically got off scot free. His girlfriend, I
Yeah.
think she kind of, to me, I think she's kind of got something to do with it. Obviously she didn't kill the three of them, but
yeah.
I do think there's a little bit more to her than meets the eye. But that was a crime of passion in a way because he did want to get away from his wife. He kind of felt like she basically wanted to have another baby, which he didn't. Because by that point, I
He
think he
knew
was
for a
at the
fact,
point of like,
like, because she blogged everything. She did everything
yeah.
online. Said when she got pregnant that third time, she goes, "Chris wants a boy," and hoping that it's a boy.
She did a video on Facebook she's wearing a T-shirt saying like, "Oh, you did it. We did it again." Basically, we
We
you
did
know,
it again. Yeah, kind
um,
of like the whole
and
Britney Spears type of
some of
thing.
those Facebook videos, if you go back and watch them, they're online.
Yeah.
You see Chris Watts, man, you see some of the reactions or less like reactions. But when he got caught, there's that famous video when he goes into his neighbor's place and the cops take him in there to look at the coverage, CCTV. And you should see how strangely he acts in that. Like he puts his hand on his head,
Yeah.
completely give himself away. Like, oh man.
Of course, you have people like the Iceman, who is notorious because he was an assassin for the mob. That dude is quite interesting because he gave two shits about his family, and literally talking to him, he says, "I lost count." You lose count as soon as you say that. It's like,
That's insane. Well, literally is insane, you know.
yeah.
Some of these.
The reason why they called it that, because that's what he would do. He put them in ice chests or bigger, one of those bigger type ice chests and stuff like that. He'd take them out, you put them in there, you take them to a crematory. That's it.
Yeah.
It's the mob, it's motorcycle gangs. You want somebody gone, they're gone. You can call people like that more like spree killers, right? But it's still to me serial because it's constant. Of course, John Wayne Gacy, the killer clown, Bobo the clown.
Yeah.
Like, what can you say about that? He was a gay man too, or he had that late. He was married, but he just couldn't do it. Buried a lot of people like underneath his house. Like underneath the house.
Yeah.
Like the reason that they figured that out, because you have heating on the floors. That's an old school house, so you have those vents. One of the officers was going to the bathroom, and you can smell it.
Right.
You can smell it through the heat of the house because it's just in those places.
Didn't he used to dress up?
Before he
He
died.
used to do a clown act as well.
Yes, he worked. He was a mechanic or something like that, and he did the clown thing on the side and stuff like that too. So it's really
that's crazy, man.
That's another one where his father had didn't like he had father issues and all that other stuff too. It's like it's nuts. Of course, Dennis Rader. You have BTK. You have his daughter.
That was a guy, very high intelligence guy as well. But he what he would do is he would mess with the people. He liked the cat and mouse chase of the killing. There's some pictures. He used to dress himself up in all these weird fucking masks, and man, like he used to take pictures of himself because he was fascinated with death. So he would take pictures of himself on delay in like a grave. But what he would do is he would stalk his victims for literally like months. and he would call them his projects.
Yes.
So he had this room in his house that no one could go in, where he had all the stuff he would do, for basically stalking these victims. His wife and like his daughter were just oblivious to anything and everything he did. I don't think he ever became a proper suspect until he became really stupid. And then he came out of nowhere. He started to taunt the police again. And what he did, he gave up such a stupid mistake, is he gave away, like, he would put onto like these flexi discs, like the old computers used to have. And he completely gave himself away by where he sent it, because he was going to this church. Because he actually took one of the fucking victims to this church.
Yes.
And like killed
because
her.
he worked with the church and stuff like that. He was neighborhood watch type of a person too, like an officer.
He was never a suspect, but
an everyday person. Again, he messed up. They all mess up for the most part. They just.
But he was weird, apparently, because what he would do is he would go around. He was almost kind of like a security guard for the neighborhood, and a lot of people said he was really weird. The way he would act and all that. But completely stupid, but an intelligent guy. And the videos on YouTube of the court case is just chilling. But he just talks about killing these women as if it was just me or you, just fucking like we are now. There's nothing like. And he just coldly goes through every case. The first case, he actually raped and killed a very young girl as well in the family. There was like a family of them.
Yeah, the Otero family.
The Otero family,
right. He killed the parents, and he took their daughter down to the basement and tied her up and stuff like that, and tortured her. And when she was dead, he urinated on her. I think he ejaculated on her.
Yeah, he raped her as well, I think.
Like, you see the pictures of him in those women clothing, all
it's
provocatively.
Weird. It is weird, man. He
taking pictures of himself. Describes what the Otero family, what he did, so nonchalant, so like. Yeah, he's like,
and he's like just deadpan about it. He's like, oh well, so I took the father and I took the girl.
Yeah, so calm about it, like just, literally no heart rate.
No,
you just don't. Yeah, it's insane.
It's chilling. Like, people go and watch the YouTube footage, man.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's haunting. Samuel Little.
He was another prolific.
He's probably the most dangerous serial killer in this state's history. He drew pictures of his victims. He's actually quite a good artist.
Didn't he kill like 100? I think
it was close to that. They don't know, but he could not describe, like, do you know what they look like? So he drew pictures for the police.
That's
the
right. Yeah.
I mean, a lot of these. Like, there's stores, there's sites where you can buy this shit, right? Charles Manson did these statues and stuff through like twine in prison and stuff like that. He's like, we used to confiscate this stuff all the time from his prison cell. Same thing with him. He just drew pictures. He goes, here you go. This is what she looks like.
That's right. He didn't even know their names on some of them.
Didn't know their names. Of course, he couldn't. He just go back and. He just did his business ruthless.
I think a lot of them were hitchhikers, weren't they? Didn't he take hitchhikers?
Yes, he pick them up. That's one thing. It's a lot of them were women. And he'd pick them up. And one guy, last name was Gillis, New Orleans area. Louisiana, Dirk's territory. Signs of a Psychopath did an episode on him. But his last name was Gillis. He was brutal. He'd pick a family man. He was married. He'd pick him up. He described one situation. He says, I picked her up and we're going to go do the deed. And she fell asleep. And he says, I put the tourniquet or whatever around her neck like that. She wasn't up. Now she's up. It literally said it like that. It's insane. It's really, really crazy. With true crime wise, you have some interesting cases. Of course, the case of Sid Vicious. Sid Vicious that was part of that rock group, and the woman right next to
Sex
him.
Pistols.
Yes, that's very interesting. Yeah, it's
yeah. With that's another case, right? So basically, the two of them, she was his girlfriend and his manager, but they were both heroin addicts. And I've gone into this one as well, even though he's not a serial killer, but I do believe that he did kill her. There's no other way it could be anyone else, but I think he was just high off his mind on drugs.
like I say, with
and they both said in interviews, they both said that they would be dead by the time they were 21, which they both, managed to do that.
You live by the sword, you die by the sword. Of course, if we're talking family annihilators, I remember when Vince said that Chris Benoit passed away. We did not know the information at the time. We found out real quick. Suffocated his son with a pillow, brutally killed his wife, and then killed himself with a weight set. So he strangled itself and let the weights drop. And what a way to go. Aaron Hernandez, of course, he was accused of 2 murders, but it didn't end up happening. He ended up committing suicide, I believe, in prison.
Do you know the case I was on about earlier? I couldn't remember the name. So I think it's called Glyco Beach serial killer. At the moment, the case is going on. It's a guy called Rex Heuermann.
Yeah, Rex Heuermann. Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
He was basically just killing these women, just picking them up. I think a lot of them were like call girls and that.
Yeah, just on the beach and stuff like that. They got a phone call from one of them.
Yeah, that's another.
And they said that one was not him. They don't think he did that. Think she maybe accidental death, died when running from him or something like that, because they found her.
Wasn't she supposed to have been high on drugs or something? And she was really
something
paranoid?
like that. Yeah, but it was in that area. So it's crazy.
Who's that one guy that's in court now, and he basically killed all those girls and I think a boy in a dormitory. Do you know that guy? Because he's going for a case now.
I don't at the moment. Sometimes I don't pay kind of attention wise, but
I can see his face now. But yeah,
there's a lot. There's one that's still open, the Seattle Butcher. That may be think of a kind of like a creepy pasta type of a thing. It's on I think they did it on TikTok. These kids find a briefcase in Seattle near the lake or something that's over there. There's supposedly body parts in that. And talking to the police, like I say, it's either here nor there. But supposedly there's a shitload of cases of missing people that have been chopped up and all this other stuff too. That's why they call it the Seattle Butcher. I haven't dived into that case. I don't know if they have any leads on that, but I remember hearing about that a few months back. That's a very, very interesting case. Of course, you have the murders of celebrities like Selena by her fan, Yolanda Saldivar. Like I say, diehard fan, of course, killed her. John Lennon, we know about that unfortunate tragedy. Mark David Chapman. Man, it's crazy to think it can just.
He was reading a book at the time, wasn't he? And he blamed they kind of think it was because of this book he was reading. Have you heard of the Delphi murder case?
Yes. Yes, they have a suspect. They have him in prison right now or in jail.
Yeah, he's guilty as hell, man. But that was unsolved for a long time, and there was video footage of him because they got the phone of one of the girls that died, and he's walking across this bridge. His name's Richard Allen. And if you look into that case, he's actually said in prison, he was on the phone, I think, to his wife and admitted he did it, and they caught him. They basically got him on tape saying that he did it. But now he's kind of he's saying he's insane, or he's not eating in prison. And he's trying all sorts of things to get out of it. But no, they got him hook, line, and sinker, basically. But that was only recently uncovered. That went years, a good few years back being,
It's
So
pretty insane. Like mysterious murders, I believe. Like the one, the lead actor in Hogan's Heroes, he was killed, but they never found, I think, who killed him. I forget his name at the moment. That's an interesting case. Of course, you have mass shootings. Those are spree killings, right? Spree killings like happen and happen and happen and happen. Then they just stop them. It's pretty. People like Phil Spector, these higher upper ups, they just get to that point. Like I say, it's insane. There's really like a lot of different. Like I say, yeah. What happened to Chris Watts' mistress? Like I say, they did a docuseries where they talked to her. Like you say, a lot of stuff doesn't match up a little bit. Kind of what she's saying. Like maybe she knows more
like
than she's telling them.
yeah. She did a 4-hour interview with the police, and again, it's on YouTube, and like, it just doesn't, to me anyway, it just doesn't seem to add up. I think she may have kind of pushed him into doing it, but I'm not. He's hinted at that recently. He's come out in prison in letters because he's been sending letters to various different women, pen writing or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
And he's basically hinted that she was kind of pushing him to do it, but I don't know whether that
it's
will
really
ever come
insane.
out.
Like you say, you have cases of the Casey Anthony. We don't know if it was her or if it was her parents that did it. There's stuff coming out. Maybe your parents knew more than what they're saying. Of course, there's Janae Bennett Ramsey. There's that case that will go on for, we don't know.
Oh man, I've been looking, like recently I've been looking up all the documentaries on that. And that has to be the parents. I don't care what you say, or the brother. There's no, I can't see how anyone would break into their house on Christmas Day or Christmas night or whatever it was, leave a ransom note, which they took like an hour to write or something. And then the father of that family as well. He's kind of like nonchalantly, when the police arrived, checking his mail, and none of that case adds up. If you look into, there's a guy on YouTube and he'll look into all these cases and he'll analyze all the stuff they say. And man, what's that? There's a case as well. There's a few, but there's a missing girl case in Portugal going back a few years ago as well. And he analyzes the mother and father.
It's insane. Yeah. You just look at all that. Like I say, cracking the code, the case of the Zodiac, and then of course the case of who was Jack the Ripper. Will anybody ever solve history's most intriguing murder mystery? They've tried.
I'm pretty sure it was a Polish immigrant. But yeah, we'll never know. I don't think we'll ever know.
It's easy to do. I think that's what Sir Arthur Conan Doyle did with Sherlock Holmes with the Moriarty character. You could say Moriarty was the Jack the Ripper character, and you could say because he done stories around.
They did a lot of films where they claimed to I know it's fiction, but they claimed to work out who the murderer was. But there's a good TV series with Michael Caine as well on called Jack the Ripper. If people want to check that out too.
You have a serial killer nicknamed Charlie Chopoff sexually mutilated young boys in New York City, Manhattan Monsters. So,
oh shit, I've never heard of that one.
Yeah, it's like I say, New York, like these places, man, they're hubs. We all know what New York used to kind of be.
Yeah.
It's New Yorkers were asking in the early 1970s when an apparent serial killer preyed on young boys, stabbing and sexually mutilating them and then leaving them for dead. So it's really...
it's crazy when you think of all the cases of that time.
Like that, too. Like say, Richard Mullins, there was another one that was doing the same time as Mr. Kemper was. So, yeah, 2 serial killers in California at the same time. Just doing their stuff.
That's insane, isn't it?
Mullins was interesting on Kemper. Kemper is extremely intelligent. He was put in a psychiatric facility and he got out for good behavior. That's all. They thought he was mentally well. That's where I get the Jason Voorhees comparison to, because when he killed his mother, he took her head off and put it on a bedpost or a stake so he can just yell and scream at her. Yeah, and he used to. He would frequent a bar where all the police officers were at. Everyone knew him. He was like a gentle giant. Little did they know. He killed his grandparents, killed his grandmother first, and then when the grandfather walked in, blew his head off or did something with him, killed him as well. He used to experiment. When he said he started doing it, he would pick him up in Santa Cruz area. There we go. Finally came to me. So he would pick them up and drop them off, and he would find spots. So he knew where to drop them off at. You know, he wouldn't kill them, right? But he'd say, this is a good place to throw a body at. This is a good place. And he turned himself in. He said, go into my mother's house, because that's where her and her friend were at. He's like, they're there. And he was like done, which is crazy to think. He's like, they have to get me eventually. And they did. So it's a crazy case. But fascinating conversations with him. Fascinating, in my opinion. Just, you know.
Right. Do you know the guy I was mentioning earlier? I couldn't put his name. Was a guy called Brian Kohlberger?
Yes.
And he's basically accused of doing the 2022 University of Idaho. Is it Idaho?
Yes.
Massacre.
Yeah, that one's very, very dark. Yeah, he they pulled him and his father over. Like on the freeway, I think, and stuff like that.
Yeah. He was casing out what he would do late at night. They got him tracked, basically.
It's like he was making a film, wasn't he? Or something like that. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I don't know about a film, but he was certainly planning out what he was going to do. And
that has to be up for the death penalty, dude, because that's premeditated. That's capital murder, in my opinion. It's sad.
Basically,
yeah.
He's a law student as well.
Yes,
so he was learning all this. Very Bundy-like, the way he went about things.
Trying to do the perfect murder, right? Trying to stage the perfect murder. So it's very interesting with them.
Yeah. Trying to be above the law, if you like. But yeah,
it's nuts. I was talking to Darren before we started the stream too. It looks like Gary Ridgway was taken to a local jail for something in Seattle. I don't know what's that about. I haven't looked at that report. So stuff keeps on getting and more interesting in this world here. Just a quick...
have you seen the documentary Don't Fuck with Cats?
Yes.
So you've got the guy on there, Luca Magnotta.
Yes.
He's another interesting case because
he's very interesting with that. Yeah, with the vacuum cleaner or something like that.
Yeah, killing cats on camera. But then he kind of one-upped himself, and he basically got this Chinese guy. He picked up this Chinese guy.
Web sleuths, right? Web sleuths caught him. It's the unwritten rule, right?
They were following him
on the internet. You don't F with cats. You don't F with cats. Yeah.
But what he would do, he would say, "I'm gonna do a killing now of a human."
Yes.
And he picked up this Chinese guy. But I've seen the video, right? And this haunts me to this day. I actually checked this out, and I wish I never did. But there's a snuff video where he's got this guy basically killed, tied up on a bed. And Magnotta's basically cutting chunks of his flesh off him. And it's an 8-minute video. I don't recommend people. It is out there if you want to check it out.
No, the internet's a dark place.
It's fucking haunted me. And do you know what? With that guy as well, his favorite film was American Psycho. So there's a song in American Psycho by New Order.
Yes.
And he plays that on this video.
How does it feel to treat me like you do? Yeah. It's
and it is fucking chilling, man. And a funny little thing to do with horror films with that guy. So basically, that guy lived upstairs. Do you know the killer in not Prom Night? What's the one set on New Year's Eve? Terror Train. So the killer in Terror Train was actually going to be Magnotta's next victim, and Magnotta went up to talk to this guy, the killer in Terror Train. I forget his name. And he said, I'll come up later, or do you want to come down later, and we'll talk and have some kind of drink and whatever. And he declined. So he said if he hadn't declined that, he would have for certainly been killed instead of the Chinese guy. Just fucking insane, man, I tell you.
It's crazy.
It's fucking insane.
Same thing with Inside Edition, I think it was, did a anniversary episode where they talked to Jeffrey Dahmer. Of course, he says, I saw this film called The Exorcist 3. And he says it was pretty good. I'm like, just talking to him how prison was doing and stuff like that, and he said, "Yeah, I thought it was really good." George C. Scott and all this other stuff too. I'm like, "Whoa, wait a minute!" It's just so it's crazy. Like you say, songs, films, just a lot of stuff, just to contribute to this sick, dark, terrific world we all live in. We have, of course, our horror and stuff like that, but this is real horror. Again, this goes out to the victims. May they long rest in peace. You will not be forgotten at all. There is justice out there. A lot of these people you see on the screen, they got justice for what? Some of it's more divine than most, but closure does happen. It does come in one way or the other. And these all are monsters. They're pieces of garbage. They're all sick. They're all twisted. And hell has a special place for them in this horror world that we all live in this community. I'd like to thank Darren for joining me for this. This was a project him and I were working on. We seem to get a good reception for this. I thank everybody for tuning in. Darren, what do you have coming up on your channel?
So Subjective Perspective Collective on Sunday. We're going to be covering opera, Dario Argento. But I've had quite a bit of a buzz about it already. Like, people have been contacting me on Facebook saying they can't wait. But what me and Dirk's going to do is we're going to go through the whole film bit by bit, like we did with Eyes Wide Shut. And then we're going to do a separate video then where we're going to compare the two releases from Severin and the German release that Dirk has. And I think he's had his notification in today for his Severin, so I'm not sure if you'll get that in time. But yeah, so we're going to be covering opera pretty much. That's all I've been doing all week. I've got like another 3 days to try and more interviews. I've been going through every single interview and taking notes, and so expect that. That's about it, I think, for now. Coming up,
I recently did a post on my second channel. I'm giving that second channel a rest. It's hard doing both of these. I kind of burn out with that, unfortunately. So expect kind of like updates monthly on the second channel. This is what this channel is about here. I'm focusing on that. I appreciate the support, almost up to 230 subscribers. I watched The Case of the Bloody Iris today.
Oh, man, great
on Celluloid Dreams, their first release. That's up there for my release of the year. So it's kind of a 4-way race right now for number 1. So at the end of the year, I'll do my top 10 releases for this year for all these labels. I plan on doing my boutique label of the year. I tell you what, one of these companies is surprising me a little bit, so they might get the nod for number 1. We'll see how the rest of this year goes. So expect that. Giallo Wednesday.
Chris, I know you. Sorry, I don't want to.
No, go ahead.
I know you're not buying anything at the moment, but 2 releases of the year for me, right? Is opera, like I just mentioned, but deep cuts. Dario Argento.
Yeah, you really like that one. You've been championing that release. Yeah.
Man, those are the top 2 for me. Sorry, though. Sorry to interject.
No, just saying with The Case of the Bloody Iris, that's a great 4K transfer. That's the best I've ever seen a Giallo look.
Yeah.
That's a true Giallo, in my opinion. It's crazy. It's almost like an outlier for a lot of stuff to come.
Oh, it's
that's
just
a conversation for another time. Great special features on that. Great interview with Ernesto Gastaldi. That's all-timer right there with that. Expect the Giallo showcase on that in the future. Slasher Saturday or Sunday. I do have something planned, and Terror Tuesday will be coming back, so expect future content on this channel. Slasher stream in the future with Darren. We're doing the Initiation and one other. I forget. The other one, we'll talk about that one. So expect that one coming up and stuff like that, and 2 films. So this is kind of an introduction what we're doing. So 2 films, serial killers. So we're doing a lot with that. This is a cool project. I like that. So first 2 films that we'll be doing will be on The Town That Dreaded Sundown and Zodiac. So those 2 match up pretty good. Of course, the Phantom Killer and the Zodiac Killer. Zodiac directed by the great David Fincher. So expect that in the future, and expect future content on this channel and their channel as well.
We got a Bundy one as well planned.
And a Bundy one, that's right. The Deliberate Stranger, which I showed, and Ted Bundy, the release from Vinegar Syndrome. So, lot planned. Of course, then we plan on doing the 2 Henry films that I showed, which is Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and then Confessions of a Serial Killer as well. Those are both based on Henry Lee Lucas. So yeah, a lot of sick, twisted stuff and great horror on this channel, and great people here. Thank you all so much for the support. You're all great. I really appreciate it. All great people here in the chat, in this community. Subscribe to them, man. Get the views up, and I thank you all a lot for checking into this one. I am Chris C, aka Chris C, the Slasher Dude. That's Darren. You all take care. You have a great Thursday or Friday the 13th, where you're all at. Expect a live too, maybe on Friday, maybe tomorrow over here where I'm at. It'll be a late one because I know Sean is doing a watch along of part 3 and part 4. I might do a late one of part 6, aka Kill or Be Killed. That's Frank and Jason. So expect possibly that tomorrow, late night for you on the other side of the world, or you on the other side of the country. So expect that. Fun stuff ahead. So like I say, I'm Chris C. That's Darren. Thank you all very much for joining. You all enjoy the rest of the day. Have a great weekend too, everybody. And we will see you all next time. Quick shout out, September 11th. We do not forget. And salute to everybody who gave their lives for this country during that. It's a tragedy, but we do not forget. And to all the victims of these monsters. And, well, we don't forget either. You all take care. You have a great day.
Have a good night, guys.